Yeah, let's start like with simple introduction. Like, who is Róisín Murphy?
She is Mickey Murphy's daughter, primarily. Yeah, my dad was quite a character, so I grew up first half of my life as Mickey Murphy's daughter, and so I'm quite proud to say that I'm Mickey Murphy's daughter. That's who Róisín Murphy is.
Yeah, like speaking into the past, present, and future. Like,
Oh,
if you
in the
could
past, I was a little girl from Ireland, and in the present, I'm a mature woman. I'm an artist, for sure. And in the future, I'm sure I will continue to be an artist.
Sure. Okay. Cool. And then, like, so you grew up in Ireland, and then you spent some time in Manchester. You also been like living in London,
Yes.
and now here.
Yeah.
Like, how would you compare all the scenes, like music-wise, if it comes to music, like
Well-
starting, with Ireland? Yeah.
I suppose everywhere I've lived, there's been a lot of music. Ireland was full of music. My childhood was full of music, full of people who played instruments and had bands, but also full of people who just sang songs, ordinary people. Everybody, really, when I was a kid in Ireland, sang songs, knew the words of many, many songs and would sing them, even if they weren't great singers. Can I just pick that up? Is that okay?
Yeah.
So like, even if they weren't great singers, people would sit around, have a few drinks. There might not be any musicians around, and they just sing to each other. It was a big part of my culture growing up. But my uncle was a very sophisticated musician. He played everything. He had many bands. He was a brilliant singer. I can't remember a time that would be my first live music experience, because I was going from being a very small child to see his bands.
Wow.
And then I moved to Manchester with my family when I was 12, and I already had the music in me, if you like, and a passion for it. I didn't think I was going to make music, but I got very obsessed with it, with going to see live music in Manchester. Initially, things like Sonic Youth, and, we were really into like the Jesus and Mary Chain and alternative music, the Butthole Surfers and Big Black and Sub Pop. This was the sort of stuff at that time. But initially it was really the Jesus and Mary Chain that we were all into. And then I got a little bit older and was able to go to nightclubs. And it was a really good time in Manchester, obviously, the late 80s. Went to all the nightclubs. There was every kind of music available to sort of experience in Manchester. There was reggae sound systems. There was amazing black clubs, with R&B and soul and hip hop. And then there was sort of the house music came in and the raves and so on. And then I moved to Sheffield when I was 19. And the reason I moved to Sheffield was because my boyfriend was part-way through his architecture course in Sheffield, and he had to go back and finish that off, so I moved with him. And for the first year, I actually went to his university a lot. That's a terrible sound. Is he picking that up?
We're fine.
The ship.
I guess we're fine. Like,
Will it be okay?
yeah.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
so. I mean,
Alright.
we can wait still like 30 seconds. That's a bit more away.
I think we got very close microphone, but very interesting. Like, I'm getting into.
It's a little bit like Berghain Saturday night when
That's
they
gonna be
open.
the. We got that
And
question.
they're just playing like the droney stuff in the beginning. So yeah, what was I saying? Yeah,
The
Sheffield. I moved to
you just
Sheffield,
like,
and
yeah.
I went to his college with him.
Yeah.
Many days of the week I would be there, going to crits and going to see people who came in to give talks and stuff, and I was really into architecture. And then the first tour of Europe I ever did was with him, and it was an architectural tour of Europe, so I went around looking at pieces of architecture. That's the way we planned a 6-week trip. So I learned a lot from him, and then I moved to Sheffield with him, and then Sheffield was full of self-starters, people who, it was very DIY scene, you know. It was very hard not to meet people who were actually doing stuff to do with music. They weren't starting record labels, starting nightclubs, starting parties, record shops, building studios, making records, obviously. Also great design practice there called Designers Republic, who did all the sleeves for the records that came out on Warp initially. And so it was a wonderful place to find yourself doing something, because it was just a foregone conclusion that I too, being obsessed with music and being really into the culture, would fall into doing something about it. But I didn't think I'd become a singer or a musician or anything like that. That happened accidentally.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You never thought, like, after you hear your voice, like, you never thought...
Well, I did sing as a child in Ireland, but everybody sang. So I told you that. Absolutely everybody sang. There was nothing unusual about having 1 or 2 songs that you could sing when everyone was singing. And I, being into sort of more alternative music and then black music as well, you know, I felt like maybe my little voice that I hadn't developed wasn't interesting, and I felt like I'd be doing something more visual, really.
Okay.
I mean, if you'd asked me any time during my childhood and adolescence, I probably would have gone through all these different phases where maybe once you would ask me and I'd say I'm going to be an artist, and another time I'd say I'm going to be a filmmaker, another time photographer, even interior designer, graphic designer, fashion designer, you know, but all visual things. That's what I thought I'd do, something like that. And then I met Mark Bryden in Sheffield, and we fell in love, and he was a very experienced producer. He was 13 years older than me. And I just, like the first night I met him, I put down on a track me saying, "Do you like my tight sweater? See how it fits my body," you know. And I just did this very occasionally in the beginning of our relationship for him. I would just say stuff or pretend to be somebody, and he would record it and put it on a track. And that developed into a handful of tracks, and then somebody wanted to sign it, and it was ridiculous. It was the most ridiculous thing. But he was happy enough to do that. I couldn't believe it, actually, that he wanted to sign a record deal for that. But I think because he was very experienced, he sort of, he sort of found it nice to work with a novice, to work with someone who didn't know what they were doing, wasn't a professional musician, wasn't a professional singer, and it was like starting from complete scratch. And this is the noisiest.
Yeah.
So it was starting from scratch. It was completely open-minded, open-ended. Anything could happen, and I learned to sing after I got the record deal, really. And so then Sheffield really was all about that development of myself. For me, for my life, it was all about developing myself as a singer and a songwriter and an artist. And then I moved to London, and at the end of Moloko. So I stayed quite a long time in Sheffield, nearly 10 years.
Okay, yeah, quite long.
And then I moved to London, and I spent 10 years in London. And that was where I really sort of came into my own, I think, as a complete artist. And I started to really manage the whole creative endeavour as a solo artist. Very much involved with, or creatively directing everything that you see connected to the records. I began to direct videos as well. And yeah, it's all times, all the places that I've lived and all the phases have been really interesting and really an adventure. You know, I've always been
Great
interested
journey.
in the adventure of it all, more than making a big plan or being particularly ambitious about it. I'm ambitious about having an adventure more than anything else. And I also feel like maybe I'm more comfortable in a weird way if I'm not comfortable. I just know I'm on the right path if I'm sort of going beyond myself, sort of doing something I don't know if I can do, you know. Then I know at least, even if I fail, at least I'm on the right path methodically, you know.
Yeah, like, yeah, we need to be careful. If we fall in love with something, we need to be sure that we're doing this, we're going to do this for the rest of our lives, I guess.
Yeah, well, it is I've made it so that it's not a narrow thing. I've made it so that I can be creative in many fields.
Yeah.
And that really suits me.
Nice, nice. You mentioned also you got like strong connection like with your family, and like did they support your like music
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
career?
I think they
since-
were surprised I did anything with my life.
Okay.
But, and so very pleased that I have a career. Yeah, my family very supportive. My mother really understands my creativity as it kind of being weird and, you know, being different, and she really supports that and understands that aspect of who I am more than anyone else in my family, I think.
Right. Yeah, that's very important.
Yeah, she's always believed in me being as different and outlandish or weird or whatever way you want to call it. She's always believed in me, in my gut instincts that way. She's a very intelligent woman, my mother. Very sensitive creatively, very sensitive to art, to beauty. Very, yeah. And, you know, understood it completely. Sometimes my father might be sort of scratching his head a bit, you know, what's she doing now? You know, why does she dress like that? Things like that. But very proud of me still.
Cool, nice. Yeah, you spoke about the journey, like if you could like tell us about the process, like, you know, starting with Moloko and then your solo albums, like, you know, about all the collaborations, like a little bit piece by piece, like.
Well, my journey was one where I fell in love with this guy, you know, Mark Bryden, and I let him develop me and help me learn how to, he taught me how to write songs and to some degree sing and so on. And I think I brought to him a kind of vibrancy of youth and a reactionary sort of energy, like we're not doing that and we're not doing this because it's boring and it's not cool, and that sort of feeling, you know?
More crazy.
Yeah, and so I think he liked having that. There was a very good symbiotic relationship for many, many years, and madly in love with him, and he was in love with me, so it was a beautiful thing to go around the world with each other as well and to spend time on a creative endeavour together. It was lovely. So I'm very lucky that way. And then that came to an end, which was very difficult. On our fourth album, we finished a fourth album called Statues, and it was really horrible time. And then we did a tour, which was probably our most successful tour, which lasted nearly 2 years. This was after we were not together. It was at once amazing and incredible. The band was never better and all that sort of stuff. The audiences were never more engaged. The shows were never better, you know. So on the one level it was brilliant, and then on the other level it was really hard because we were no longer boyfriend and girlfriend, and we were trying to work out how to go our separate ways. And then I worked with Matthew Herbert
Ruby
on
Blue, yeah.
on my
was
first
Ruby
solo
Blue, yeah.
album, Ruby Blue, and that was an incredible mind-altering experience as well. Worked in a totally different way with him.
You were like sampling the objects, like back in the days that wasn't like kind of popular, I guess, like.
Well, I knew, I mean, it's almost like always like this when I work with people that I admire from afar. I always admire producers who sound different to everyone else. So, or have a very distinctive feel to what they do. And so I kind of search for them, and then I'm always very surprised as to how they achieve it when I start to work with them. And so he was like very into found sound or sampling sound and creating sounds to play on synthesizers from scratch. So not using things that were already pre-programmed inside the machines. He had a kind of rule that he didn't do that, and he used his sampler to create banks of sound. And then he'd ask me to bring in objects that meant something to me, and we'd create sound from that. And so the whole thing was like taking a microscope, an audio microscope, you know, and placing it on me. So it couldn't have been a more Róisín Murphy album in a certain way, because it was like all the sounds were me. All the sounds were made of things that belonged to me or things that meant something to me. It was really like just deeply looking at me in an audio sense. And it also meant that every sound that I made was fine for him. Every bit of singing I did, he liked. He could do something with everything. And that, of course, was a great relief, because I wasn't sure if I could even make music in a different way than I had already done with Mark, and in a very small little tight bubble with somebody who really loved me and cared for me. I didn't know if I could go like everybody else into a new studio, into a new person, and create big projects like albums. But Matthew was the perfect first person to do that with. And we did create a beautiful record, I think. Ruby Blue is really still a very strong record. And then I went to EMI, which was a big major label at the time, and they gave me loads of money to make Overpowered. And I could work with whoever I fancied, and I could...
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. and yeah, I worked with all these different writers and producers, all these arrangers, mixers. I could work with layers of different people on one song. And I was the boss. I was the boss of it. And it was incredible.
How
Really
did
an
you came up
incredible
with the name,
experience.
actually? Like how did you came up with the name of Overpowered? Like
Overpowered.
what's like meaning to you? It was something
Well, obviously
personal?
it's a song. It was one of the
Yeah.
songs on the album, so I
Yeah.
used the title of that song for the title of the album.
Yeah.
I don't know how I came up. Well, I'm overpowered. I don't know. The song itself is there's really a theme in my work that's a theme of submission or lack of control, or being brave enough to admit that you can't control everything. To be strong enough to stop trying to control it all. So something like Sing It Back, you know, the lyrics are very much that. They're like, when you are ready, I will surrender. Take me and do as you will, you know. It's really, I'm on my knees now because I'm in love with you, and there's nothing I can do to stop loving you, you know. it's just going to come and maybe pass like a sickness, you know, almost. And there's a lot of that in my songs. There's a lot of that in the latest album. Acceptance of that, of not, you know, there's a lot of other artists, a lot of other work out there that's very much the opposite. That's very much about being very strong and, you know, laying down the law. And I'm a bit like that in life, you know. I am a very strong person. But I don't find it particularly interesting in songs or in music to have such one way of looking at things, you know. Like, I like to use music to carry many emotions, you know, in one go. I think music is very good at that. It can carry all these like opposite emotions in one moment. And I'm not really interested in showing how strong I am in my songwriting. And anyway, going back to overpowered is really the scientific version of that, which is when you fall in love, you're flooded with hormones, and you don't have control over that. It just does it. It just does it naturally, and it changes your whole sort of chemical composition. It changes your behavior, and it changes your thoughts. And this is not something you've got control over. And I found that very interesting when I read about a particular hormone called oxytocin that floods the brain when you're in love. And that was what it was about.
Nice. Yeah, very interesting. And then we had on the table like hairless toys, right?
And hairless toys and
Was
Take
like
Her Up
more
to
it-
Monto go
yeah.
together.
Yeah. It's more like Italo, housey, like how would you...
It's definitely got a bit of Euro. So, it's not Euro in the way, not in the umpty way, but it's a bit intellectual. They're a bit intellectual, those records. They're made with Eddie Stevens, who's my musical director live. Very important figure in my life creatively, maybe the most important. Because, you know, you can make these esoteric electronic albums, but I think if I hadn't have been able to, he's been my MD for 28 years. You know, even in Moloko, he was MD, you know, and even in Moloko, the records we made weren't easy to translate into a band and into a live experience. But I think if you can do that, if you can make interesting records and then make live experiences to go along with those records that are exciting and interesting and reflect very clearly the records, then that's probably what's kept me, I'm still here, that's why I'm still here. If it was only the records, I think I would have disappeared a long time ago. And I wouldn't have been able to keep interest either. I wouldn't have developed in the way that I have as an artist if I wasn't living that sort of seasonal life of, okay, now I'm in the studio, I'm concentrating on an album, now I'm touring, maybe for a year and a half, 2 years, then I'm back in the studio and concentrating on the album. You know, it's a good balance. They're very different disciplines, you know, but they're really two sides of the same coin. And if you don't have both, I can't imagine you can have a 30-year career like I have had. And he's really been the key to that, because he can take these weird records, these electronic records, whatever it happened to be, dance records, and he's so clever, he can translate it across, you know, into a band and make it happen live, and really live, you know, where the band is really interacting live and things can really go wrong and so on. Which, you know, maybe I don't need to do. Maybe what I can do is, you know, put a tape on and come with the dancers and maybe spend more money on the light show or have some explosions or something. But I wouldn't give up. I wouldn't give up being with the band for anything. And sometimes you wonder why, because you know you play festivals and you play a great gig, everybody's happy, the audience like that, that's very good, yeah, fine. And then we go off stage and then a DJ comes on. And you know, there's a whole band, there's all the lights, there's all the outfits, there's all the different songs, all these different moments, it's like a piece of architecture. It's like all these different rooms and everything's planned out and it's insanely complicated to bring it to life. Yeah. And then a DJ comes on after you and there's a stick like this, he puts the stick in and the whole field goes berserk, like they go mad for it. Because I think for many people, it's too much to concentrate on. Live music is hard for them.
Yeah,
it's not as instant. It's not as balanced. The sound, you know, obviously coming off the stick is always the same, and the balance between the bass and the hi-hats and the, you know, the mids and the highs and the lows and everything, they're all there, it's all been done, and that's it, and you put it on. And for many people, that's a lot easier to enjoy than what I do live. But I still won't give it up. I mean, I'm never going to give up that live thing. It's just very special.
I think now even it's gonna come back even more for like DJs as well to play more live, because it's very like overcrowded with DJs itself. So
yeah, but like, people love it. I mean, they literally love the sound of music going on and being very loud.
Like it's different sound live.
It's like, different sound live, yeah, and it's harder to
beat that.
Well, I think it's hard to beat that, but you sort of need to know about who's playing what to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, it's, you know, over their heads. Yeah. It just is. Just the simple fact that, you know, the bass player's playing the bass, the drums are playing over there, the other fella's doing this, the other fella's doing that. You kind of need to have an understanding of the scope of it for it to be super enjoyable.
Totally. And then, like, you released 2 albums at the same label, like Play It Again Sam, like, and which is currently Pias, and like, what's the story behind that? Because like
the 2 albums were made at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So they were all it was all recorded in one go.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Usually nowadays I just do 1 album, 1 deal. One moment, 1 deal. You know, it's like I make the record and then I find the record contract for it.
Yeah.
And then I go off free again and do the next thing.
But there is still no pressure of like recording, like you just take your time and like there were like breaks in between anyway.
Yes, there was there was certainly break before between Overpowered and Hairless Toys, because I had babies and other things in life took over for a while.
And then after that there was like Roisin Machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you said,
it was Róisín Machine, which really started a long time before, because I did simulation with Parrot 12 years before I released the album. So that started a long time before. Parrot is someone who I've known since Sheffield times, so I've known him 35 years now, and 30 years, I should say, not that long. And I just occasionally would make tracks with Parrot over the years. Jealousy was another one that we released many years before the album came out. And then Incapable, Narcissist, these all came out before the album really was even completed. And that developed over many years, that album. And then we made a remix album of it, Crooked Machine. I would describe it as sorry.
Oh, bless you.
I would describe it as a Sheffield record, primarily. It's got a sound of Sheffield to it. It's got a hardness at the bottom. It's like disco, but it's got this hard Sheffield steel feeling at the bottom of it, and this rigorousness to it that's very Parrot too, you know. He's very rigorous. He'll just remove, you know, till you get to just the essential. And he's very visionary, and he's a producer who can really imagine the room that it's been played in. Because he was a long time a DJ, although he lost faith in DJing many years ago, but in the beginning of like house explosion in the UK, he was a big DJ. And so he really understands that. They're imaginary rooms though, actually they're kind of too cool for reality, those rooms now. But they still exist in his imagination, and he makes the music to fit the room.
And like if we take all the albums which you did and like compare like to the last one which you released on Ninja Tune, like what would you say about the...
It's not comparable. None of them are really that comparable.
No.
Only as a sort of, for me, a development.
Okay.
I think there is
Keep
development
going the
for
journey.
me. The singing and well, certainly with the Hit Parade.
Yeah.
I began, and a little bit with Róisín Marie, because they worked hand in hand. They were in tandem for a while. I was working on both at the same time for a while. I recorded most of Hit Parade myself, the vocals, alone with music software, which was a kind of a new moment for me and another development for me, which made me, as I said, very prolific and able to work on 2 albums, 3 albums at the same time. That's great.
It's intense.
It's not intense. It's not really. It's well, it is, but it's a different kind of intensity than, okay, you're working on this album, you go in every morning, you know, at 11 o'clock and you leave at 7. It's more like you can record when you feel like it, because it's always there.
When you got the inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, Stefan, who, DJ Coes, who I made this album with, was the one who suggested that I use the same software as he uses. Because he had it in his mind that we wouldn't be together much. And that he would really rather work on his shit on his own and get me to send the stuff to him, you know? And that's what he's more used to, working like that. And so he really encouraged me to learn how to do this. He was like, you know, you'll be just hoovering. You will just be so hoovering, and you will have a little humming sound in your mind, and then you will go straight and you will be able to record it just there like that. And it's true, you know. It turned out to be very true. And that was great because we hit the pandemic through making this record, and I was already up and running in such a way as that didn't stop me finishing what I had to do for Hit Parade.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Yeah, very impressive, like last one as well. And I was like interested into like when you implement like disco or pop or like electro into your songs, like what resonates the most with you, like how you get those inspirations, like if it comes to the mixture of these genres.
Oh, dude, it's kind of, with Parrot and Róisín Marie, I knew what we were doing. And with, so, you know, so as I said, he's a very visionary. So he will say to himself, we're doing this. It's going to be a bit like this, or sound a lot like this in the end, X, Y, or Z. And then it does, yeah. And then with Hit Parade, nobody had any idea how it was going to end up sounding. It's a different process for Stefan. It's, I think, more like he chips away at a piece of rock like a sculptor, you know, but he hasn't necessarily planned it out. It's more abstract. I think Parrot's like, okay, I've found a piece of rock and I know that there's a man with a disc in it, you know, and he's going to throw it. And I can see exactly that's enough dimensions for that and this and that, and that's what I'm going to do. And then for for somebody like Stefan, he has to go with the rock and find out what it is toward the end, and then be very careful that he doesn't like lob off a piece that makes the whole thing fall down, you know, at the end. But and then he puts it in the bin. But yeah, so it's a totally different kind of process. Does that make any sense? That what I just said about sculpture? Yeah, and he's fascinating, Stefan, because his ears are so fucking sensitive. They're always open. It must be very tiring. They're always open, always alive to critique of sound. It must be very tiring, and that's why there's not many people capable of doing what he does.
Yeah, you work with like many talented producers. Like, how does it typically start for you? Does it start with the friendship, or you just like?
It does. It normally starts with some sort of connection.
Okay.
Emotionally, friendship-wise, life-wise. Even, you know, starting with Matthew Herbert, who had done some remixes for Moloko over the years, and I had sang with Matthew when he was DJing and stuff like that over the years. And there was this connection, and he always said that we should work together. And there he was at the end of Moloko, you know, at the end of Moloko, when there was nothing and only wind blowing in my life, you know, there was Matthew. And then, obviously, I've said it, the Parrot was best friends with Mark from Moloko. So I've known him for many, many years. Mark from Moloko was my lover, you know, before anything. Yeah. And then, you know, Stefan asked me to contribute to his album a few years ago, many years ago now, so 7 or 8 years ago. And then he enjoyed the way that we connected, and he said, I'd like to make a record for you now, you know. And it just so happened that I was the last person to put anything on his album. And I think he was literally like, what am I going to do now? You know, I've got nothing to do. I've finished my album. I'll just give these other tracks to Róisín then. I happen to be there, you know. So I feel like, you know, I live, I breathe, and the work comes out of that.
And you enjoy. Yeah.
And I enjoy, exactly. I enjoy.
Nice, nice. Okay, yeah, that's great explanation. Now, like changing a little bit, like if you could bring one place where you perform, but it doesn't exist anymore, like which place would that be?
Oh, but it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, like from the past, like, I don't know, from
Moscow.
Sheffield, from...
I'd like to go back to Russia one day. I always enjoyed playing there. That'd be nice. But it's completely closed
No
now.
anymore. Okay, Pasco, you said, like...
Moscow.
Moscow, but
yeah.
the place, like the club?
I'd like to go to Russia again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Pity.
Yeah. And then...
I know, I loved St. Petersburg, you know. What a place.
Beautiful.
We always went, and you could never see the whole museum there, the Hermitage. You could never see everything that's in it. Ever.
Yeah.
You could live a lifetime and never see everything that's in there. So I miss that, yeah. It's funny to see a life, to have lived long enough for things like that to have happened, for something like that, to a country like that to have opened up and closed down again, you know, it's bizarre.
Weird times we are living.
Weird times.
Yeah. And we got another plane coming. And now...
That one's easy, Jeff.
And now speaking about Berlin, like, what do you think about Berlin? We came from Berlin.
It feels like a hometown when I play it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of those ones, you know. I've got a few of those. There's obviously London, Sheffield, Manchester, Dublin, and then places like Berlin, New York, Paris, they feel like hometowns. You know, they've got these like very, very long guest lists.
That's great.
Many people there. And the atmosphere is very much, you've come home to us, you know, and so it's very special to me.
Yeah, we are aware about your like Berkane gig. Like it brought actually like quite phenomenal attention. Like, what do you think? Like how we felt inside
I
playing?
did Berghain twice, and both times they had to close the room like an hour or 2 hours before because it was already packed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does go off when I play Berghain. It really does. Well, Panorama Bar, I should say. I'd love to sing down in the big room one day if I ever had the right kind of music. I'd love to do that. Because that sound system in there just kills me. Kills me.
Cool. And like, if we could jump like now to fashion, like if it comes to fashion, you're like quite freak. Like you love fashion. Like, like which designers you inspire the most? Like I don't know if you could like.
I'm not particularly in designer mode where I know all the designers and follow everything fashion-wise at the moment. I'm more, and I never have been, I'm much more like, you know, into it like a fantasist. I like to dress up as things. Bit cosplayish, the way I go ahead with things. I'm very influenced by Cindy Sherman, in that sense that, or not influenced, but what's the word? Validated by. Like my behavior as a child to do with clothes, obsessed with clothes as a child, never had enough clothes, didn't have many clothes, never could get enough, and was always dreaming about having more and more things to dress up in. But when I could like steal my aunt's 60s clothes and my uncle's country and western jeans, and then when I moved to Manchester and I could go to charity shops and jumble sales and car boot sales and so on and dress in vintage things very cheap. I literally would dress up as things to go out on the street to exhibit myself and to get reaction, even from a very young age. So I would say that I was an exhibitionist from a very young age. But I would hope that people would not see that as a massively egotistical thing, and as more of a genuinely wanting to put an exhibition on and you use yourself for it. And yeah, going back to Cindy Sherman, then I saw her work when I was a young teenager and felt validated by it. Felt like, okay, well, if she's doing it and it's cool and it's art, then it's okay to do it, to do this thing that I do that turns me on so much, you know.
I guess also London was great for that, you know, to like express even more, like back in the days.
Yeah, everywhere was good for that. Manchester was very good for dressing up as a Victorian ghost, and you know, my mum was an antique dealer and she had a Victorian pram at one time in the house, and I dressed up as a Victorian ghost and walked around with this pram to see what I could make people do. Or even earlier when I was in Ireland and dressing up as a Chinese woman, you know, with the Chinese dressing gown, and you know, yes, probably very bad, but I was only a little girl, and I'd do the makeup and everything, and I'd sit in the window of my bedroom and like wave at the cars as they went by, and so on. But yeah, I mean, or dress up in my Aunt Linda's wedding dress and walk around Arklow.
Was it your grandmother also a stylist? Or?
My grandmother was very stylish, yes, but she was a very powerful woman, my grandmother. She had, her husband died young, and he left her with these 3 businesses to run. One was fish and chip shop, another one was a cafe, and then the other one was a snooker hall, you know, snooker tables, big thing in Ireland. And so she had to be the boss woman. I grew up with her being the big boss woman. And she always wore like the fur coat, leather gloves, the red lipstick. She always had her hair done. She was powerful, my nana.
I guess that also affected your like music-wise like performance, I guess, and like what do you think about this strong connection between fashion and music? Like,
Yeah, I mean, obviously, hugely influenced by Grace Jones as well.
yeah,
And I remember the first time I ever saw an image of her was on the cover of Private Life. It's a compilation album. She's standing on one foot with a mic in her hand,
yeah,
and it's ever so slightly elongated. You can't see. There's no like marcation where it's
Yeah.
been done. It's seamless. She's just slightly longer than she should be
yeah,
in the arms and the legs, I think. And the lighting and the sort of airbrushing on it makes her look very unreal. And it was standing on somebody's fireplace, mantelpiece in Ireland. And everyone who went into that house would be like, what is that? And I was only a little child, you know. I was absolutely mesmerized. What is it? Is it a man? Is it a woman? Is it a statue? Is it a drawing? Is it real? Is it an alien? But that, you know what I mean? It was like so many questions. Nobody'd ever seen anything like it. And she's made some images still that just nobody's ever made better.
yeah. Legend. Yeah.
And I saw her play live many years ago, and just was blown away by the simplicity of what she was doing. It was like 1, 2 lights and set of steps, and her, and yet it was the most dramatic thing I'd ever seen. And then, much more recently, I've come across some of these Italian divas from sort of mid-century, particularly Mina, who also, you know, I feel validated almost looking at, you know, I feel like, okay, this is the type of artist I actually am, you know, and there's some kind of, I'm related to this somehow without knowing, and without having ever known about it before. But, you know, she did like an album cover with a beard. She had a beard, you know, like a proper, nobody'd ever seen anything like it, still haven't. There's still nothing weirder and more like challenging than that. And she did, all these artists that have influenced me, they all have a sense of humor, they all have a sense of wit, and don't take themselves hugely seriously. They don't feel like you have to be always serious to be serious. And I very much feel like that too.
Yeah. You're icon since decades, and like, but this like one breaking point, like kind of. Do you remember this like moment which you knew that?
No, there's no point where
there is no point.
I knew anything, and I still don't know anything, and I don't know whether I will be remembered or the music will be remembered, or if I have total financial security or...
Okay. Going back still a little bit to fashion, like you also perform like at Victor and Rolf, like show, like what are your experiences with like Dutch designers?
That was one of the
like,
most dangerous things I've ever done in my life.
Oh really?
Yes, I was 7 months pregnant, and I was standing on something nearly a little bit bigger than this, but very tall, in this very heavy gown. They look very light, those tulle dresses, but because there's so many layers, they're super heavy. And these big stripper shoes, basically. And up I went, and I had to sing on that, thinking if I fall off, I kill the baby. And it's all over for me. Maybe I die too, and I'm in front of the world's press. So that was one of, I think probably maybe even the hardest 15 to 20 minutes of my life. I came off stage and went, and went outside and sat on a park bench with my friend Simon and burst into tears, cried uncontrollably. The amount of stress and hormones and everything that had built up over the last couple of days, getting ready for this, what is essentially kind of bad sex, really, as far as performance is concerned, because compared to, you know, 2 hours of a Róisín Murphy show, this is 10 minutes of hell, like, you know. But what a beautiful show it was, you know. I'm so happy I did it. When I look at it now, it's a stunning piece of fashion art, and it's brilliant. It was brilliant, and but also they are the most dangerous of all the fashion designers. All the really dangerous stories I have involve Victor and Rolf things. Like during the overpowered time, there was a dress that I wore for one of the photographs, which was pinned. There was a dress that had inside it a lighting rig and a sound system. And in order to have that floating around you, you had to have this thing strapped, like this steel thing strapped underneath the dress, and then the dress was pinned up onto this massive rig. And I was shooting that on a high street in the UK.
Okay.
Because, you know, the whole idea with Overpowered was you were in this glorious, ridiculous fashion, but you were in very mundane, day-to-day scenario. So I was there with my shopping, you know, in this thing. And it was windy that day, and the dress was like a sail. It was like a sail on a boat. And the inside was so heavy. And many times I nearly fell over. People caught me, you know, and then I'd have to go back in and stand again. And if I fell, that would have been very bad.
Yeah.
Very bad.
And recently you also went for Emilio Pucci. Like, what was the story behind that? You just like went by yourself?
Recently, just now?
Yeah, like 2 days ago.
Yeah, we went to Rome.
Yeah.
The whole family went. The story is that Camille, who's the creative director of Pucci, loves me up. And she came to my show actually in Milan recently. She's a lovely person. And they used Pensiero Stupendo, my version of Pensiero Stupendo, for their show in Rome recently. And so she invited me and put us all up in 5-star luxury. It was just really such a fantastic jolly for us all. Because I actually didn't have to do anything. I didn't even have to sing. Just went to the fashion show. They played me music, and we got to stay in Rome for a few days. It was wonderful. Wonderful.
Nice. And then one question also like about like comparing like in Berlin, like we got a lot of basements, you know, like kind of intimate shows.
Oh,
but besides that, you also
I
like,
love a
you know,
good
you got
basement.
like huge crowds, you know, like, and like how do
No, I
you
like the basement thing. Personally, Sheffield was always basements. Everything was basements or small parties, small free events.
Yeah.
They are the times that I look back on with great fondness. The time I spent in Sheffield. We were like a family making our own culture, you know,
Because
doing it yourself.
So you're gonna perform soon, right? Like in Berlin again, like with Peaches? How that came
Yes.
up? Yeah.
Yeah. It's just the brainchild of the promoter. But what a wonderful thing.
Yeah, right. But did you came up with the idea, or like like how that happened? Like who think about the idea of
Not me.
Just
It was an idea that was presented to me. But I
Like,
mean, there's
okay,
a lot of
cool.
this going on this year. I'm playing another show in Madrid with. It's just me and Alison Goldfrapp.
Okay.
And then I'm playing another show in London where it's me and supporting Grace Jones. And then in Germany it's me and The Gossip and Peaches.
Yeah, amazing.
So I'm gonna have a summer of like bad bitches. Yeah, it's gonna be good.
And then US tour is coming, right?
US tour, yeah.
Yeah. How's the preparation going for that?
Yeah, that's good. It's all really good. Yeah, I love going to. You know, America's like. You really need to be being good voice to go to America, because I want to bring my thing back home almost when I go to America. You know, I'm very aware that much of what has influenced my music started there, and that people who will come to my show are surrounded by amazing music all the time, and so I have to be really bloody good.
Be ready, yeah. Cool, awesome. And then do you plan any like videos, as you are also director? Like you did a lot of like videos by yourself.
I'd love to be making more videos, but there isn't that much call for spending lots and lots of money on pop videos anymore. People tend to like to watch, you know, you'll get more views farting.
Yes.
Yeah, which I actually did a little. She got me in trouble the other day and put up a bit where I was farting. But you know, they want to see behind the scenes. They want to see real. They want to see. So it's hard to convince people to spend a lot of money on making pop videos these days. I'd love to direct more and more, you know, and I'd like to direct other things than not just music things too. So we'll see.
Cool. Okay, and the last question is, our magazine is also like bilingual. Like we got roots in Asia. Like, what do you think about this part of the world? Like about bridge between?
Don't know much about Asia at all. I haven't travelled extensively there.
Would you like to have a tour and plan?
Oh God, yeah, I'd love to. I'd really like to travel in China and see what the story is, because it seems so unbelievably powerful and important in the world, and yet so hardly understood at all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think definitely that would be amazing, and people would love you there.
I'd
Yeah.
love to go. Just to travel there, just to try and understand.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna have actually a tour after now with the magazine to introduce. So
Are you?
yeah, we're gonna have like 20 in Seoul, then 27 in Tokyo, then 30 in Shanghai, and then we're going to Hong Kong and back to Seoul.
Amazing.
Yeah, so maybe next time you could be part of one
Yeah.
of the events.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.